about. But I just want to say Valerie is a phenomenal writer, and she wrote this poem once. When I kill Buddha when you see Buddha on the road, kill him.
Oh,
right? I love that
stole
piece so
everything
much.
from Val.
And I want to tell you that I think about that piece a lot because like, the way you present it, I just love the way you read it. I'm not going to read it here today or not. But it made me think that you should do a one-woman show. Alright, and then on deck is the amazing Joan Willett with the goddesses. Alright, please welcome Valerie to the stage.
Can you just hold it? It's already going. It's Periscope.
I gotcha.
It's streaming. It's live.
Oh, very cool.
I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to speak really fast because I want to stay within my 10 minutes. And I'm not going to read poetry to you. I'm going to talk about poetry. And the way I'm going to do that is to tell you about poetry and coffee. My name is Valerie G. Keane, and I am the founder of Poetry and Coffee. Poetry and Coffee is a group of people who get together over food and drinks and each bringing a poem that they chose. And then we discuss it. The only rule is that it cannot be your own work. We read, we talk, it's as simple as that. And that's kind of where the simplicity ends, because it always becomes completely magical and takes on a life of its own. And I'm always amazed what takes place around the table. Major life epiphanies, healing of old wounds, realization of life purposes, waking up out of a long period of feeling like they've been asleep, sleepwalking through their life. And it amazes me, but it does not surprise me because I know that poetry is capable of that. Let me tell you a little bit about why I formed Poetry and Coffee. I formed it in November of 2013. I'm a writer. To write, you must read. This is every great poet's advice. I've never heard a great poet give advice to write great poetry saying, in order to write great poetry, you must write more. They always say, read more. It informs your work. We never get to discuss poetry at events. We go, we listen to each other, we applaud, we go home. So I wanted to discuss poetry in depth. I wanted to hear, I'll use this very loosely in quotes, the greats, and I didn't want to have to travel far distances to do that. I wanted an opportunity to hear them in my own backyard. Mostly I started this group because I'm enormously selfish. If I am the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I was tired of sitting on the couch by myself and reading a book of poetry and great poems and going, and looking up from that book and there's no one there to talk about it with. So mostly I started it for selfish reasons. The coffee part of Poetry and Coffee is an important part of my vision. Because there is a beautiful and different thing that happens when we all sit around the table and break bread together. It's different than sitting in a workshop, and it's different than how we're all sitting now with an audience and facing all one way and then one person at a mic facing you. So eating or having a beverage together does something for the conversation. I think you know what I mean, right? There's no charge to attend Poetry and Coffee. You don't even have to buy food or beverage. I always say, if you don't wish to buy food, come anyway. You are more important than your money. And there will never be a charge. The enjoyment of poetry is free. Poetry books and things of that sort cost money. But love of poetry is free. And I never want cost to be prohibitive for someone who wants to come and gain joy from poetry. We have two types of tickets, and yes, you need a ticket because I only have 20 spots at each Poetry and Coffee. The first kind of ticket is you bring a poem and participate in the discussion. The second one is that you just come and participate in the discussion. Or not. You can come and say nothing, and it won't be weird. We have people do that all the time. So 10 spots for poems because we have time limits and we don't want... I would have it for 3 days running. So we only have 3 hours to discuss 10 poems. And 10 spots for discussion. You know me. And 10 spots for discussion. You can come check it out. No pressure. How we talk about poems. And this is the part that I want to talk about. This is the part where I talk about poetry. But how we talk about poems at Poetry and Coffee is first, we drop everything we think we know about poetry. The second thing is we drop everything we think we don't know about poetry. And for the time of Poetry and Coffee, for those 3 hours, we're just old readers of poetry. poetry sitting around a table with fresh eyes and fresh ears. The poet Robert Pinsky said, "The difference between interpreting a poem and understanding a poem is much like the relationship with a person. Does a human being want to be interpreted or understood?" And he said that the mere act of being willing to slow down and pay attention and read a poem closely is an understanding, much like a person. A person you listen to and pay attention to feels understood. So, at Poetry and Coffee, we talk about all elements of a poem, and the beautiful thing is that there's room for all points of view at our table, because we keep in mind that we are focused on the poem itself as the central thing, and also the definition that we've all agreed upon before we start the conversation of that understanding poetry as the act of paying attention. The reason for the rule that the poem you bring cannot be your own work is because that's just a whole different animal, right? That's a workshop, and Poetry and Coffee is not a workshop to workshop your own work. That was hard to say. If you're a writer, Poetry and Coffee, if you are a writer, Poetry and Coffee is fuel for your writing process. Ed Hirsch, the poet Ed Hirsch said, "I have tried to remember throughout that poetry is made by flesh and blood human beings. It is a bloody art. It lives on a human scale and thrives when passed from hand to hand." And that's exactly what we're doing at Poetry and Coffee. It's for everyone. It's for lovers of poetry, and it's for haters of poetry. So for those that are poem archaeologists, like me, as I call them, and for those who are intimidated by poetry because they had dry, passionless, horrible teachers who passed on the myth that poetry is dense and inaccessible and highfalutin and boring and arrogant. It's for writers who don't write poetry, it's for readers, it's for adults, it's for children, but sometimes we curse and we talk about sex and murder and drugs, so maybe not all the time for children, but I have done it for students just without the curse words. They bring the sex, murder, and drugs, right? It's for everyone, and the great thing is that when we begin a Poetry and Coffee, we only introduce ourselves by our first name, so no one is coming up behind a title or their bio or a fancy degree, or like myself, a lack of a fancy degree. We're all just readers of poetry around the same table, and magic comes out of that. It's a truly wonderful thing, and I really hope you get to experience it someday soon. But don't take my word for it. Go to the website, www.poetryandcoffee.com, and read some of the things people who have experienced Poetry and Coffee are saying. We have themes. I encourage people to interpret them broadly. Some upcoming themes are going to be The Poem That Saved Me, Cry Me a River, What Am I Doing Here, Youth, Aging, Wisdom, Something Bigger Than Myself, WTF poems. This is not going to be for sissies. You got to be really brave, and you got to bring a poem that you just don't understand for the life of you. Why is this a good poem? That's going to be a special one. And also writing the unwritable. We now have special events open to people who have been to at least one Poetry and Coffee, so they know how it works. Discussions of book-length poems. We just did Claudia Rankin's Citizen. Coming up is Alice Oswald's Memorial, a version of Homer's Iliad. If you have not seen this woman, she has memorized this book-length poem. YouTube her. It lives in her. It's the freakiest thing to watch. I've never seen anything like it. So we're going to have a discussion about that. Poetry and Trail Mix, which is going to be a day hike up in just an hour away up north. In-woods poetry readings, and writing breaks for writers and non-writers alike. If you are not on the mailing list, I encourage you to get on it. I only send out one email per month announcing the next events. Poetry and Coffee announces their meetups to people on the mailing list 2 days before they appear on social media, and since there are only 20 seats available, it often sells out really fast. If you would like to be on the mailing list and be the first to know about all of these events, I'm passing around a pad of paper if you would pass that around, and just put your name and email there, and I will put you on the mailing list, and you can unsubscribe at any time. I'm also sending around my card with all of our information on it, our website, email, Twitter, Facebook address. On the back is that great Ed Hirsch quote, so please take as many as you like. Actually, would you do something for me? In the spirit of the literary festival, would you take 5 cards, keep one for yourself, and give 4 out today or this week? Let's pass poetry from hand to hand. Let's you and I do that together. And let's remind poetry that is made by flesh and blood human beings, and that it is a life raft that carries you through this terribly complicated, difficult, completely joyous thing called life. And if you don't know how that statement could possibly be true, please come and have coffee with me. Thank you so much.
It was so organized and perfect. Great. So awesome. I loved it. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, you need a sponsor for Poetry and Coffee. You totally need a sponsor. I'm telling you.